And for the sake of time, I'm afraid I would not allow Albert to have a take. Perhaps if we come to the second round, you could use part of your time to talk about some of the consequences. And before we get to the second round, we just have one comment here, which also is the foundation for the second round. And I must say that we are streaming live on Facebook. So if you're joining us, this is SEPSA Talk, and we are discussing the topic corruption in Africa, the missing paradigms. And my guests have been Albert Kobina-Mensah, Mr. Lord Edusei, and Mrs. Akosua Jima. So a message or a comment from Miles Fosukwesi. He says that we are grateful for your submission. It's very important we know what is going on elsewhere, also to help shape our system here. Corruption has since been the bane of this country. Then he goes on to say, please highlighting the causes. Let's not forget to indicate steps to curb this monster. And that's what we do in the second round. So in the second round, we want to look at what new paradigms can we put in place to empower individuals and institutions to fight against corruption in Africa. Because it's quite clear that beyond the systemic causes, there are also failure in our institutional arrangements. So the question I ask again is, what new paradigms can we put in place to empower individuals and institutions to fight against corruption in Africa? I would like to begin with you again, Mr. Albert Kobina-Mensah. Maybe you can use a minute or two to say something on the consequences. Thank you.
So much. I would like to add a few for the consequences of corruption. And my two panelists have said great things, and I would like to add a few. Evans, the African Development Bank estimates that Africa loses more than $300 billion annually through corruption. And that is an equivalence of 25% of its GDP. Evans, it must be emphasized that $300 billion annually is more than the GDP of Burundi. Burundi's GDP is $2.3 billion. So that's how much Africa steals through corruption. And then again, if you go to Zambia, Yahya Jammeh, the former president of Gambia, of a population of 2 million, his government alone looted 50 million USD. Further, he personally stole over $300 million from the state and left a debt of 130% of the GDP for the country. You know, in Gambia is a country that is living in poverty, in abject poverty. And what happens is that in most often, the Human Development Index ranking, Gambia is among the last 10 in most often. So that is how much we steal. Now let me highlight a few. The 2016 Human Development Index captures no country in Africa with very high human development. Okay, out of the 40 countries found at the bottom of the rank, 35 came from Africa. They included countries like Swaziland, Angola, Tanzania, Nigeria, Cameroon, Papua New Guinea, Zimbabwe, Mali, Liberia, Gambia, South Sudan, Chad, and Central African Republic. The other thing corruption does to a country is also poverty.
Now, please, you need to, if you end on this, this will be great, because you are using part of your time, so be aware.
Let me just quote something from George Aite's book on Voices from Africa.
Go ahead.
He captured, as African economies deteriorated, Africa's tyrant and elite cohort furiously continued to develop pot bellies and shins at a rate that commensurate with the economic decline, whilst African peasants are asked to tighten their belt. Vampire elite are losing their DS with fat bank balances overseas. When you go to Nigeria, more than half of the population of Nigeria are poor. You know how much the legislators in Nigeria take? They take over $40,000 every month.
You don't mean it. Anyway.
Yes, they are among the highest paid in the world. $40,000 every month. That's how much they pay. Meanwhile, 87 million of the population are living in poverty. So these are issues for us to actually see if corruption is a thing that we need to give credence to. Corruption is bad and we need to root it out. To come back to your other question, the second question was on what? If you could help me.
Now, yeah, this round we are looking at what new paradigms can we put in place to empower individuals and institutions to fight against corruption in Africa.
Thank you very much. On that note, I will not talk much because most of the time had been eating. I recommend a few for Africa. Africa needs, especially when I talk about Africa, let me give an example to Ghana. We need Ministry of Accountability and Good Governance. Tanzania did it before. To bring about transparency and accountability with regards to the use of public funds. We need Ministry of Honesty, Conscience, Integrity, and Values to imbibe in us to choose humanity topmost priority in all what we do, and to say no to corruption in any form. Because corruption is bad and it breaks society and it creates economic quagmires and a sorry state. We need Ministry of Lean Size Government. Big size government, for instance, in Ghana, spends over 70% of the government expenditure or budget. Big size government creates ambiguity of functions, overlapping of functions, duplication of functions, waste of public funds, and unsustainability of the resource in question. The typical example is what is happening in Ghana. Ghana has about 130 ministers as at now. Talk less of the chief of staff, the presidential staffers, their deputies, talk less of the MPs, talk less of the principal secretary, their deputies, talk less of the directors, talk less of the chief of board chairman, and all that. For instance, the Ministry of Transportation alone, we can talk about Ministry of Transport, we can talk about Ministry of Railway, we can talk about Ministry of Aviation. If you talk about the Agricultural Ministry in Ghana, for instance, it boasts of a minister of state, and 3 deputies. These are wanting, sheer wanting dissipation of Ghana's public funds. Then again, we need meritocracy. Appointment and promotions, especially in the police sector and in all sectors, should be based on competence and not on political affiliation. There's something we call political fatherism, or political godfatherism, where individuals have become financiers of political parties. There was a time where only one person individual paid 1 billion old Ghana cedis to support the campaign of a presidential candidate in Ghana. When it happens that way, which is called the political godfatherism, it breeds corruption, because such individual does corrupt activity and you are not able to penalize such individual because he supports the party. We have the role of the media. The function of the media had already indicated are 3: to educate, to inform, and to entertain. If then, why do we see fetish priests or the media inviting fetish priests and malams to teach people how to steal and become lazy, showing all sort of funny things, how animals could vomit money, how people could make blood money, and all this? The content of the media, or what is showed, should be also should be taken care of. This content should be aimed at bringing out information that inculcate the people in the people to say no to corruption in any form. The real questions should be asked, and they should do that without fear, and they should bring into bear the real issues affecting the society. We need strong civil society organizations and independent ones. We need to criminalize corruption and punish corporates severely, regardless of their race, regardless of their political party, regardless of their tribes, regardless of their affiliations, regardless of their status, regardless of their class. If you default, you have defaulted, and the law should deal with you. We should make politics less attractive by cutting salaries and allowances of lawmakers. We should revolutionize the system by scraping things like S. Gracia, buying V8 for ministers of state and all that. And at the end of the day, we also have to set up centers. We can set up centers where people can report corruption. An online center, a platform, for instance, can be set up where people should be able to report issues of corruption. We know that the Whistleblowers Act of 2006 did something like that, but people were afraid of reporting corruption because they were victimized. They were afraid of being victimized. The law should be able to protect people who opt out to speak against the system or to speak of issues of corruption in our society. Then my final bite will be on political will. The political will to ensure that the right things are being done. And that when people default, when people become corrupt, the law should deal with them. Then again, we should also make sure that in ourselves, we train children in our education sector to be capable of putting humanity topmost priority for themselves to do well, and also bearing in mind their actions and inactions on the greater society. With this many, among others, I think we could be able to arrest corruption and we could be able to build a better society for us all in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert Kobna-Mensah, for those critical points that you've highlighted. Before I come to you, Mrs. Jima, Albert, just a follow-up question. I mean, you started by saying we need a Ministry of Accountability plus something which I missed. And then you go ahead to say we also need Ministry of Lean Size Government. What do you mean by that? Because to the lay person, are you saying we should set up a ministry called Ministry of Lean Size Government? And why another? Sorry, if I could end. Why another ministry when there are so many institutions, which you've also already mentioned some of them, Yoko, Shraj, Office of the Special Prosecutor. Why do we need another Ministry of Accountability? And what exactly do you mean by Ministry of Lean Size Government? Is it a term you are using or is it a ministry on its own?
You know, Mali did it. Mali did a ministry called Ministry of Less Government Spending. Okay, so if I say lean size government, what I mean is that, you know, you cannot have a population of about 25 million, 30 million with ministers of 113. That is a scam. It brings about duplication of functions. The solution here is that there's certain ministry that can be consolidated. Okay, there's something we call legal pluralism. Legal pluralism is whereby many sectors exist to manage one particular resource. You know what happened when that takes place? There's unsustainability of the resource in question, and the problem is not solved because there are so many ministries dealing with one particular issue. How can you have transport, Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Railway, Ministry of Aviation? All this could be consolidated into one. So when I mean inside government, we cannot have a ministry with 3 deputies. That is overlapping of functions. That is duplication of functions. That is ambiguity. It brings about ambiguity of functions. And the problem will not be solved. We can have an agriculture ministry, fisheries could be added, okay? And even forestry and all that could be consolidated into one. Then under this, we have maybe one deputy taking care of the others. The others are being taken care of by regional ministers and also by the directors under such particular institution. So what I mean by lean side government is that I'm trying to say that with that ministry, will be able to teach government that the way to go is not big size government, but the way to go is lean size government.
But do we really need a ministry for that? Anyway, that's a point well made. But I feel that, yes, you're calling for government to reduce, you know, the number of appointees that they have. But I'm also wondering why we need a ministry to check that. But point well made. There's another point.
That is exactly what I meant, actually.
Great. But then another point which I just wanted you to touch on briefly, you said that we should make politics less attractive. Is that a way to go? If we make it less attractive, are we sure of the people who then would be in
Thank
power?
you very much, Evans. You know, that is why politicians or people are called civil servants. Okay, there's something we call servant leadership. Leaders who come to serve us because they are servants. They are our employees. We voted for them. We are the employers. Okay, so politics is a call to real servant leadership. So we should make it attractive to attract people who really want to serve their communities into it. But when you make ministers, like the case I mentioned in Nigeria, where legislators are taking $40,000 US monthly, it breeds unnecessary competition, and everybody would like to get into politics. Make it less attractive. Slash ex gratia, slash buying of V8 and other cars for politicians. Let them live normal life like every other individual also live. Okay, we have people who are lecturers, we have people who are professors in the universities, and you ask if they get this amount of salary, the system should be fair. Whether you are in public service, whether you are a civil servant, whether you are a politician. So when you make politics less attractive, we attract people who go into it because they want to serve their country and by putting national interest topmost priority, and not because of the gains that they envisage having when they get into political positions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Albert Kobna-Mensah. So I come to you, Mrs. Jima. What new paradigms do you think we should put in place to help fight corruption or empower individuals and institutions going forward?
Well, thank you for the question, and I think I have learned quite a lot. In general, I think that there are different actors in the corruption. I know that oftentimes we focus on those that happen, like the police officers and what have you, and politicians. But in fact, bureaucrats and the individuals, like the public, is part of the corruption network. So in my mind, there has to be very comprehensive in terms of tackling it. Even our mindset in that society has to change. I know that in Ghana, for example, they have all kinds of institutions. A lot of the literature advocate for what they call strong institutions, strengthening the institutions, such as prosecuting people and stuff. But as we can see in Ghana, they have the judiciary, they have all their laws, they have all kinds of institutions, but they're not functional because, again, it is the same people placed in it, number one. Number two, they are not very independent to act autonomously and independently or impartially. And so everybody's greasing everybody's palm. So the institutions are there, but they're not functional. Sad news, who are the people that are going to be strengthening the institutions? It has to be either the parliamentarians, or it has to be the same actors that are actually implicated are the people that have the power to change it. Their population, however, they condone it through the way they vote. They vote not on national matters, they vote not on accountability, but they're voting because the person comes from their area. The person is their church member. The person is from their hometown. So that's how they vote. So how do you address this with institutions? So these, I feel like this is a little bit more Western ideology, which in this particular case, it doesn't work. A few years ago, the Canadian government, when the Trudeau government was elected, they were talking about how judges are appointed, and they thought the federal government was having a little bit of influence in the way judges were appointed. Even though the Canadian system, the manner in which judges are appointed are very independent. Civil servant police officers, like ordinary citizens, are about 13 people, including lawyers, judges, police officers, teachers. They formed a committee, and ordinary community members. They formed a committee that does the selection. So if you want to be a judge, besides meeting the legal criteria, you've got to apply. But then these ordinary people will look at your background. Besides your qualification, they will look at your community service. They will look at your character. So do you take care of your family? Are you always going around drinking? Do you owe anybody? So they look at all this as indications of your character. If you're going around borrowing money, you owe debt. That means you may be corrupt to steal money, right? If you don't take care of your family, you can't tell me you can take care of a justice system, right? So you have to be a person of high integrity. But one of the reasons was they wanted to depoliticize it. So what they wanted to do was to take it away more from the politics. by strengthening the processes. So by the time the people are shortlisted, then the prime minister or the minister of justice will have a line of people, whoever the list they have, at least they're choosing from an independent list selected by these independent civilians who have selected the people. So in my mind, what I'm saying is, a lot of times people talk about strengthening institutions. But what I think is, because of the cycle of corruption and almost everybody is compromised, I don't know where to start. Second, the actors, some of the actors are also international actors, foreign companies, foreign agents. They bribe, they know that they target African officials and politicians and bribe them to get mineral rights. And so the other part of it is lawyers, accountants, and foreign banks help these African corrupt people to loot the money and siphon this money out of Africa, right, into foreign banks. So it's a whole network of inside network and outside network. The other thing that I have learned, according to Transparency International, is many of these people register a pseudo company name. Essentially, they're hiding under almost like a ghost name company. That is how they transfer their monies. So some of the new ways that they're recommending is what they call principle of beneficiary ownership transparency. So that means if somebody is sending money abroad, there has to be a mechanism both inside the African countries and then in the advanced countries to hold the advanced countries a little bit more accountable. So they're holding their companies that go to bribe these African countries and deprive the ordinary people of their resources by bribing the Congolese leader or the Cameroonian leader and then getting all these mineral rights whereby they mine it for profit at the expense of the people. What people are advocating is these governments, like say UK, USA, they should hold their companies more accountable with their Foreign or Anti-Corruption Act. And people advocate that many of these countries should be implementing the OECD Anti-Corruption Convention as well as the UN Anti-Corruption Convention. What it means is these countries should begin to investigate their people more and prosecute them to discourage them from going out to Africa just because the African countries don't have the political will to do it, right? Also, they should also be scrutinizing monies coming from Africa to see that the money, the name registered is not, it's like if I am siphoning money, I'm the beneficiary, I'm the decision maker, but then I'm using AK's name or Lord's name. Meanwhile, they don't own it. So Lord owns a little business in UK, and I pretend Lord is siphoning, he's a legitimate business owner, and I kind of put it through him, even though I'm the beneficiary of the money. So people are advocating for this principle, whereby people will register businesses in their own names and have these governments inside Africa and outside also to scrutinize these people. I also do think we should probably, because the institutions, foreign institutions imposed on our corrupted African system is not working, I would wish that they would actually begin to have these chiefs or the traditional institutions whereby representation is more of maybe ethnic groups, people choosing people in their area to be the representative in parliament rather than random candidates who goes there and be corrupt. So then if you were the people that chose you from their ethnic group or their area, you'll be accountable to the people and you're given a budget and you're answerable to the people, almost like delegating more to the local people, so the local people will hold their representative more accountable rather than the central government. For me, I think these kinds of things can work rather than always talking about accountability and all these things, because we have all these institutions. SHRAG, for example, is there, but SHRAG doesn't even have a prosecuting power. So if SHRAG finds somebody guilty, SHRAG has to present the case to a court or a judge for them to decide whether they want to prosecute or not. SHRAG itself cannot prosecute, right? Because they don't have that power. When they did it, they didn't give them that power to do it. On the other hand, we see that those that have the prosecution powers, a lot of research by Transparency International has found that all these procurement processes, there's corruption in it. The judicial system has corruption in it. Many government agencies have corruption in it. So the people that are supposed to be strengthening, holding them accountable, they themselves are compromised. So how do they hold the system accountable? If they hold the system accountable, then they can't be getting their monies. So I think these kinds of new changes or attitude has to happen. And I also think it has to start at a basic level, because corruption is happening in the schools. In Ghana, for example, I heard that healthcare workers actually demand certain documents in order to treat people, right? You go to other places like Cameroon, people, if you don't bribe or grease somebody's perm, your family member may die, right? So this kind of thing has to start everywhere, because in Ghana, you see that people glorify money. They don't question the source of the money. Somebody just has to be rich to be liked. So people are finding all kinds of, and so the society in itself condones material things and money. You just have to have money. We don't have to worry about, they don't quite promote hard work, excellence, and perseverance and accountable behavior. They just want you to have the money. Whether you slept around with people, whether you stole it, you just have to have money. And you have people running around you and demanding favors. And as long as they get favors, you are a nice person. Whether it's the priest, whether it's the pastor, you just give them money and they like you. That's what people do. So cultural mindset. Lastly, I'd like to say UNICEF has a program they call social change. What they said was, in a society where there's something called social expectation, if you are in a society whereby certain people, for example, corruption, unless everybody begins to stop the corruption, those that even have the goodwill may lose hope and stop sort of not participate. Instead of not participating, they may join in, because if they do it, their bit doesn't make a difference. So they may, and that is part of the reason why it is spreading, because the rest of them are not, and they're actually hailed for getting money. So everybody joins in that. So what that course actually teaches, according to those philosophers, as well as the social psychologists, are there should be sanctions for all kinds of bad conduct, all kinds of corruption. We don't even investigate our pastors in Ghana because people will not tolerate. That's the pastor, and they are all corrupt. They are siphoning money. They're doing money laundering, and we don't want to talk about it because that's my faith. I'm a Christian. Don't talk about them. Whatever ethnic group, don't talk about my person. So we're all participating by either condoning or directly doing it. So I'd like to end here in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up question before I come to you, Lord. And this is clear. You seem to be a bit skeptical with the idea of strengthening institutions, and I get that point very well, because it's cyclical and it's not functional. So in that case, are you calling for strengthening individuals? Because there's this debate going on whether Africa, and I'm sure one day we'll talk about it here, whether Africa, we need strong individuals or strong institutions. Is that the sense I'm getting from you, that we probably need to educate the people and get strong individuals because the institutions are not functional?
That question is for me.
Yes, please. It was a follow-up.
Okay, sorry, I'll keep it brief. So I think that the institutions, part of it, the institution, when we talk about the institutions, to me, it is not just their frameworks that they set up, right? Because if we're talking about institutions, I think we are talking about those established institutions such as the police force, their legal framework, for example, the judges, the political system. So these are structured, established institutions. But in my mind, institutions also mean our cultural mindset, the society itself, the manner in which we function. I told you at the beginning that there is that expectation within Ghana. If you go right now, if I go to the post office, nobody expects me to pay a bribe. But in Ghana, your own family members expect you to grease somebody's palm. So the mindset is so corrupt of the individual mindset. Everywhere, everybody expects you to grease somebody's palm. It's so normalized that people don't see anything wrong with it. They actually think not paying bribe, you are actually not conforming. So this is an institution, the social or the mindset itself. So the institutions are to be strengthened. I think institutions are important because the institutions are the ones that hold us accountable. so that wherever I'm working right now, I know for sure that if I collect bribe, I will lose my license. I will not be able to do anything, and I may face a fine. I may do this. So every time I'm walking, whether somebody sees, even in a grocery store or even online interaction. So because of that, because I know the consequences of it, if somebody writes something on my page, for example, that I think could be breaching any kind of rule, whether it's even though my Facebook is my personal page, anything I think may be breaching any rule whatsoever, I will warn you, take it off my page. I don't want to be a part of it. Why? Because people in my community, people in my profession expect me to be responsible, not just in my workplace. So it is expected of me to behave the same way everywhere. And because why? One of the reasons, not because I'm an angel, but I'm generally a very responsible person. But one of the things, I don't take anything for granted because I know I may be watched everywhere. I go to the store, sometimes I look in my back, just a funny story I will tell. I went to a store one day and my son told me to donate money to some charitable organization as I'm cashing out. So in the meantime, I look around and then I see a physician that I know very well right behind me. So how could I not say I would donate? So anyway, I had to be coerced into donating the money because my son said it and I know somebody behind me. I went to the post office. The guy, something was happening. I just politely said, my apologies for delaying you. I looked around and my neighbor was next door. So my neighbor seeing me could have been disappointed. They could have lost respect for me, right? So the behavior of the community itself holds you accountable. So I know that if their community sees me dumping any garbage, everybody will lose respect to the extent that extends to my profession, that extend to everything. So those are strong institutions to the extent that wherever you are, it is impacting on how you conduct yourself. But Ghana is not like that. You see an adult person, a politician, insulting in public. You see a politician sleeping around and people don't see anything wrong with it, right? But if you're sleeping around with your subordinates, how would you hold your subordinate accountable ever? That's your girlfriend. You could not, that's a conflict of interest. So in general, institutions, my problem with institutions in Africa, in Ghana, based on what I've seen in Ghana is, they have the institutions, they have the laws on paper, but it doesn't work because people have to make the institutions work. But the people in there, whether they're heading or they are working within, they themselves are compromised because that person gave them $20, that person gave them $5, that person gave them a free house, and people think that's normal. So I don't know where to begin, but I just don't know. I don't know how our problems can be solved because it is so endemic within the individuals and within the society at all levels. So these days you see the pastors also joining in. You see the chiefs also joining in, because if you don't join in, you are left out. So everybody is joining into that kind of almost like a cartel of corruption, or I would call it a criminal enterprise. Everybody is joining in, because otherwise, if you have money, you're expected in Ghana. If you don't have money, you are just left out, no matter how responsible you are. People just think money is how you measure your worth in the country. So I don't know how the straightforward answer.
Thank you very much. And so come to you, Lord. Yeah, Mrs. Jima touches more on, changing our mindsets, improving our traditional institutions, and also, of course, enforcing sanctions. I mean, when people go contrary to the laws, these need to be enforced. What's your take on what new paradigms can we put in place to strengthen individuals and institutions to fight corruption in Africa?
I think my two honorable panelists or panel members have spoken well, and there are few things that I can add. Yesterday, for instance, something happened in Angola, and it was in the news throughout the world. The son of the former president was Dos Santos, and his son, Filomeno Dos Santos, was the head of the country's wealth. They had it was a wealth account. whatever money they were getting from oil, they were depositing a certain amount of money in that account. And he was made to manage that account. The total amount of money in that account was $5 billion. So when he was appointed head of that wealth account, he started siphoning some amount of money from the account. According to the report, he actually managed to siphon about $1.5 billion out of that account. Luckily for Angola, this boy's father retired as president in 2017, and then he appointed somebody to replace him. This gentleman, who became the new president, looked at the country's balance sheet and realized what had taken place under the former president. So he decided to pursue a different line of action. And this has brought a lot of focus on Angola. So my point is that there's one of the key areas where we could actually fight corruption is to make sure that we don't put too many people at one particular place for a long time. Because if you do that, then you are creating an empire for them. And this gentleman yesterday, he was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, and the money that he was stolen has been part of it has been recovered, and the Angolan government is pursuing the rest of the case. His sister, who is called Isabella dos Santos, who is identified as the Africa's richest woman, is also being pursued for siphoning a lot of money from the country. So my point is that a change of government is always necessary. Don't put one party in power for a long time, because once you do that, you are creating the institutions for massive grand corruption. And the replacement of Eduardo dos Santos with the new president has actually shown much light on the fact that we need to keep removing or changing governments. So for Ghana, we have to look at what is going on in the country. MPP and NDC have failed the country. Akufo-Addo came in promising that he wasn't tainted, he would fight corruption here and there. He did well by creating the Office of Special Prosecution. However, nothing has happened. That should tell us something wrong is going on. And the fact that something is going on should tell us that we need not have confidence in Akufo-Addo and the MPP and NDC, because they have been there for the past 25 years. And if the fight against corruption is still not being won, then it means what my friend A.K. Mensah said about political will. The political will is not there. And if the political will is not there, we need to change those politicians, because they have become part and parcel of the problem. And if individuals become part and parcel of a system, the only thing we can do is to remove all those individuals. So come 2020, this election, I'm going to encourage Ghanaians to look critically at the roles of these political parties and the politicians, what they have done to Ghana in the last 25 years, whether they have actually helped Ghana to fight corruption. And the data my friend AK was showing on the screen, in which Ghana's corruption index seems to be deteriorating. It's an indication that these politicians are not doing a good job, and we need to change them. That is one side. We also have to, there's another way that we can also fight corruption in Ghana, by building a coalition of civil societies around the world. If you look at the Transparency International started as a corruption fighting force. Now they have become a serious institution when it comes to corruption analysis. So Ghana, the civil society organizations in Ghana should join forces with the rest of the civil society organizations in the world to fight corruption. One thing the politicians and corrupt individuals fear most is when there's pressure, not only within the country, but from outside. So we should build forces with the anti-corruption organizations in North America, anti-corruption organizations in Asia, anti-corruption organizations in Europe, and anti-corruption organizations in Africa. When we are able to do that, we will be able to name and shame and also make it difficult for these corrupt individuals to travel around showcasing themselves as good citizens. Because if they go to Asia, they can be targeted there. If they come to Africa, they can be targeted there. And once they see that there's pressure coming from all angles, they will find it difficult to steal and to hide. Another issue I would like to touch on, you see, there's this guy from Sudan called Mo Ibrahim. Mo Ibrahim established a fund in which he was paying $5 million to every African leader who left power peacefully and without any tint of corruption associated with him. When Kufuor was in government, he thought he was going to be offered that prize, but he was never given that award, simply because it became clear that when he was there, like I've said already, he never fought corruption. And somebody who never fought corruption shouldn't expect to be awarded a prize, or shouldn't be expected to be given an award based on good governance. So Kufuor was very disappointed that he wasn't given the Mo Ibrahim anti-corruption award. And this should be one of the areas. African leaders should be denied any prize that has to do with good governance when they don't put in the effort of good governance. If you don't fight corruption, you should be made to know that you never put in that effort. Akufo-Addo, for instance, his time in office, if he wins this coming election, and he still doesn't show any interest in fighting corruption, he will be tagged as one of the leaders in Africa or Ghana who never put in the effort to fight corruption. So we need to do that. And like I said, this civil society organization that we have in Ghana and the rest of the world, we should work with other international bodies like the United Nations or the World Bank. If Ghana is going for a loan, for instance, we should be able to put pressure on the World Bank and say, don't give the money to Ghana because the money will not work. The $80 million that you are going to give to the government is not going to do any job. So don't put the money in the account of Ghana. If the pressure goes on the World Bank, they too will feel the heat and will start putting pressure on the government to make sure they don't steal money. So there should be international pressure. One area is the United States, because we know US is a powerful country. If they identify you as a friend, you are free from criticism. If they identify you as an enemy, you can be sure that pressure can come on you. So governments in Africa that are not doing well in fighting corruption, or who are also seriously deeply connected with the problem of corruption, these governments should be identified, and then the US government should be lobbied to put pressure on them to stop being corrupt. I can give several examples where the US has refused to cooperate with African leaders, and through that they have managed to change their ways. My friend Akosua talked about Obiang Nguema, the son of Obiang Nguema, who is now the vice president and who has Bugatti and all fleet of cars. Yes, this guy was identified as a corrupt person. So his house in US was seized. His Bugattis in France were also seized. So many of his properties have been confiscated. And this is good, because then if he is trying to steal again, he will be he will think twice. And since Abacha also left the office and then he passed away, there's been pressure to get his looted money back to Nigeria. This is the kind of thing that we should, I think we should put in place. If I know that the money I'm stealing is not going to end in my account, there will be little incentive for me to continue to steal. It is very good that we fight corruption from every level, but I am very much interested in grand corruption, political corruption. When Ghana was doing the privatization in the 1990s, we did privatize a lot of state-owned industries. 80% of those state-owned industries was tapping under NDC. 80%. 167 companies that were privatized out of 179. 167 went to Ghanaians. There were companies that were given to NDC people. I don't want to mention names, but I can give you so many companies that were privatized in Ghana that were not that were undervalued. One of them is MEM timber in the MEM timber industry. It was valued at $5 million, but then it was given to the guy for $2 million, and then it became a problem when it came to even payment. So some of these people who are in Ghana, especially in NDC today, who are shouting corruption, corruption. Not that I don't agree to the fact that there's corruption in Ghana, but these people have actually undermined Ghana's development because of what happened under Rawlings, 1990 to 1998. They privatized a lot of industries, but where did the money go? Who bought those assets? How much did they pay? To the point that they didn't even pay a penny for some of these companies. This is what is called grand corruption, where you loot the country's assets so that you could establish yourself as a businessman. You know, all these people should be prosecuted. But then, if you also look at the Ghana political scene, these people are the very people who are also in government and institutions. So how do you prosecute them? Pressure must come from the people. And that is why we need to educate the people that corruption is bad for Ghana. And once the people begin to understand that corruption is bad for Ghana and for them, they will start mounting pressure on these corrupt individuals.
Thank you.
And Ghana will be safe from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lord Edusei Akins, on those wonderful points. You touch more on the fact that we should vote them out. And we also talked about this breaking the duopoly in Ghana last week, and also mountain pressure, external pressure. You call for the various civil society organizations to be able to come together to help fight against corruption. Before I come back to all of you again to give us your concluding remarks, there's one message here that I would like to read from Facebook. And those of you who are joining us now, as we stream live on Facebook, this is SEPSA Talk. Today we are discussing corruption in Africa, the missing paradigms. My guests are Albert Kobena-Mensah, Mr. Lord Edusei, and Mrs. Akosua-Jima. So this is from Henry Owusu, who adds to the ways to deal with corruption. He says that we need a blockchain system to keep track of our receipts and money transactions within the governing in our country. So someone also calling for a blockchain. And Albert, I received a private message from someone who said he liked your political godfatherism, and he asked a question. I know we've discussed this already. How do we deal with that? Is it through the cap of political financing? Because people also see it as a way to make money. So if I have money and I do not have the expertise and I support someone to win power, why shouldn't I enjoy? When you talked about some of the ways to deal with that, what's your reaction to that before we come for the concluding remarks? This political godfatherism that you talked about, the person seems to suggest it's not bad at all if I'm doing it for a good cause.
Yeah, but when that happens, we have individuals sponsoring political parties, and what we don't want to see in politics is what is called rent seeking. Okay, rent seeking, and also people living and seeking their private interest at the expense of the greater interest of the nation. But so when there is political godfatherism, we realize that the one particular person can sponsor. There was a time where I said earlier that one person paid old Ghana cedi 1 billion to sponsor campaign of a presidential candidate. So what happens is that such person, when you come into government, such person could be caught in corrupt deal and cannot be prosecuted. So the solution here is to cap, is for the nation to cap how much a particular person can donate to sponsor political parties in the country.
Thank you very much. We also talked about this when we looked at democracy versus monocracy in the African politics some time back. So yes, our time is fast spent, and I give you each of you a minute or two each for your concluding remarks. I begin with you, Mrs. Akosua-Agyeman. What's your concluding remarks? How do we reduce corruption? Let me put the question that way. What's your concluding remark?
Well, we all know it's a problem. I am glad that the panelists are admitting to it, because one of the problems with many Africans, I find, they don't like confronting the issue. They would rather like to cover up and pretend, oh, the white people too are corrupt. But the problem is, who does it impact the most? In fact, in Africa, corruption impacts the poorest twice as much as it does on the rich. And especially the bottom, the poorest of the poor, it impacts on them twice as much as their top rich people. And the other part of it is they are the people that actually also get impacted. They're the people that are twice as much likely to pay bribes. And they're twice as much, they're just so impacted because once the money is stolen, they're the people that should be benefiting from the public goods and services. Recently, we all saw the voters registry, whereby we heard in the news that people were being bypassed. That's a form of corruption, jump in the queue, right? So you could see that in our society, the rich doesn't have to even suffer for their own corrupt system they created. They still have to jump the queue, and then the poor has to suffer the most for the dysfunctional system the rich have created, or the political elite has created. In essence, so what I'm saying is, many Africans don't like to admit the problems we have. And until you admit you have a problem, I don't know whether you have the will to solve the problem. We have a lot of problems. We're the poorest region, right? We have the poorest number of people in the world. We're the most corrupt people or region in the world. And we can talk about colonialism and what have you. Yes, it impacted on the system, but you know what? We are willing participants, because we are not the only place that was colonized. But it sounds to me there's a sense of complacency. We don't like certain things, but we never make the effort to change them, right? So let's even say colonialism. Yes, we all know it's evil. They did this, they did that. When we know the systems they brought to us are making us corrupt, are destroying our society, why haven't we done something about it? If we so think our systems are good, why haven't we lifted up the systems in our system that are good, like our own institutions? Botswana has actually done a fairly good job with that. They integrated their cultural institutions into the political system, whereby chiefs are advisors. Chiefs can actually also adjudicate on cases that are civil or petty crimes. And so they do 80% of those cases using customary law to ensure accountability and also to relieve pressure on the systems. And because the chiefs are more trusted by the communities, so they do these disputes and they administer on these other rules. They also are part of the political system. So then they advise, and they are also part of the National Assembly. They also choose certain legislatures within Botswana. So they lifted some of the African traditions that are helpful or that are compatible with democracy, and they're using it. I do think Africans like too many excuses, right? As much as I don't downplay our tragic past, I think we use it as an excuse, especially the political elite, to continue, because of the same structures and mechanisms that colonialists use, that they're using to exploit their own people to benefit, to exclude others. So essentially what I'm saying is, to combat this corruption, I think, as Lord said, it requires a lot. But I think mindset is the biggest part of it. Because if the people don't know that their own action for voting for a politically correct person is aiding and perpetuating it, then I'm not so sure how you can actually vote for responsible people. If the people are not coming together to put pressure on the politicians to make changes as elections are coming, I'm not seeing people even demanding accountability. All you see is singing and praising somebody for no reason, and then the things they're talking about are irrelevant. People are not talking about which part of your manifesto shows me you are going to be fighting corruption, and what are the policies. How are you going to do it?
For the sake of
right?
time, yeah. So
okay, so just to wrap it up, I would like to say that the people are part of the system. The people are part of the corruption. So in terms of levels, it takes the individuals to be aware rather than say, I don't like politics, I don't do politics, and sit down and complain. It doesn't change anything. So the people should change their mindset. They shouldn't be participating in corruption, and they shouldn't be voting corrupt people and turn around and complain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Akosua-Jim. A powerful message out there. Mr. Lord Edusei Akins, your concluding remark.
What I would like to say is that corruption is a very, very serious issue that can undermine the growth of a state, and undermine the quality of life enjoyed by the people. And therefore, it has to be taken serious. However, fighting it requires a lot of tools. Some of it should be economics, some of it political, social, and cultural. If you don't have these tools in economics, like what my friend Akosua said, you need to impose sanctions. So if you don't impose sanctions and people are made to enjoy the money that they've looted, then corruption is going to continue. In some countries that I know, especially in Singapore, if you are rich, you must prove how you became rich. It's as simple, prove it. If you cannot prove how you became rich, then you have stolen the money, and that money must go to the state. If you build a house that costs, say, $10,000 or $5,000, you must explain how you came by that money, because we know how much you are earning. If you cannot prove how much you came by that house, then the house must be confiscated. This is one of the simple tools that we can, if we apply these tools, a lot of MPP politicians and a lot of NDC politicians will lose their assets. And I insist that this should be one of the tools that we should employ. But the question is, who is going to do that? And that is why I think the civil society has a bigger role to play. The pressure they will mount on the system. Look, it took Ghana about more than 20 years before we came by the RTI bill. There were a lot of pressure on both NDC and MPP governments until Akufo-Addo came and said, okay, I'll pass the RTI bill. Pressure should be mounted on them, and it should be sustained, because if you lose focus, these politicians, they don't care about anything. So my concluding remark is that we should be very focused, maintain a sustained pressure, and that will help us at least to reduce the level of corruption in the country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lord Edusei Akins. Mr. Albert Kobina-Mensah, your concluding remark, and please make it brief. We just have 2 minutes more.
Thank you so much. I think they have already added. The last thing I would say is that Lord Edusei talk about colonialism being the cause of Africa's problem or the root cause of corruption and all that. What I would say is that we have actually gone past colonialism. Societies have gone ahead. You know, I had always argued that poverty is not the cause of corruption, because you have had rich people steal what belongs to the masses. Going forward, let us build a society where people are honest politicians, honest political parties, honest church members, honest market women who do not sell goods that are rotten to the people because they want to get money. Put humanity first. Honest husbands, honest wives, honest people across all spaces and time. And it should be the duty of the church, the duty of the home, and the duty of the community, and the duty also of the educational system to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert Kobna-Mensah. So thank you very much, viewers, those of you who followed us live on Facebook. Thank you. This is how far time will allow us. Our topic for today has been corruption in Africa, the missing paradigms. I'm sure you've learned a lot. The takeaway or take-home message is that we should admit that indeed Africa is corrupt, as said by Mrs. Jima, and then we should be able to punish those who engage in corrupt practices, and we should all say no to corruption. If not, we are doomed. We might perpetuate the cycle of poverty throughout. My name is Evan Sapiakisi, the host of SEPSA Talk. Thank you very much. And then we meet here another time again. Thank you.